There are stories that surprise us with the strength of the bond between two people. In many families, there are accounts of elderly couples who, after decades together, pass away within days of each other. When one goes, the other seems unable to hold on for much longer. This intrigues not only doctors and psychologists, but also those who seek to understand what might lie beyond physical life. Is it simply coincidence, or is there something deeper connecting these closely timed departures? It's a rare but documented phenomenon, especially in couples over 70. They share not only a routine, but an intensely interwoven emotional and spiritual connection. When this bond is broken by the death of one, something invisible also unravels, directly affecting the other. We're not talking about idealized romance here, but a tie built over a lifetime. And when that tie breaks, it can trigger consequences that go beyond clinical explanation. In observing this phenomenon, scholars and spiritual researchers have found recurring patterns. Edgar Cayce, known for his intuitive readings, addressed this type of connection in several accounts. According to him, there is a union that transcends the body and remains active even after death. This would explain why some elderly people seem to feel the call of the other, departing soon after. It's as if the spirit of one gently calls the other to rejoin them. In times where so many relationships are fleeting, couples like this show us the lasting impact of a deep love. To better understand this, it's important to continue listening to stories, exploring these experiences with respect and curiosity. If you're interested in topics like this, please subscribe to the channel and give us a like. Here you'll find reflections that value the wisdom accumulated throughout life. According to Cayce, the soul doesn't abruptly disconnect after death. It goes through a kind of transition, a moment of reorganization. And during this phase, the soul still perceives and connects with what was most meaningful in its last life. In the case of a couple united for decades, this mutual presence remains alive on a more subtle level. Cayce described that in certain cases, when one partner passes on, the soul may remain nearby, observing, feeling, trying to understand the new state in which it finds itself. This creates a spiritual bridge between the two, and if the other is emotionally fragile or already predisposed to depart, this bridge intensifies. It's not a rule, but a possibility that respects the trajectory of each spirit and its willingness to continue or not in the earthly realm. In many accounts analyzed by Cayce, he identified that some couples had intertwined life missions. It wasn't just about affinity, but complementary purposes. One assisted the other in learning patience, forgiveness, surrender. And when this cycle was completed, remaining in the physical plane was no longer necessary for both. The departure of one served as a sign for the closure of the shared mission. This doesn't mean that all couples experience this type of connection, but those who develop a life rich in mutual growth tend to form a stronger bond. The loss of such a partner can represent, spiritually, the release from the joint task. And the second, realizing this on a soul level, chooses to depart as well. A silent choice but deeply spiritual. Furthermore, Cayce explained that the mind plays an important role in this process. He said that the mind is the builder of reality, including in death. When someone deeply believes that their life has lost its meaning after the loss of their companion, this conviction acts on the body and the spirit. Grief becomes not only a pain, but a summons to depart. The body can quickly become ill, and the spirit can accept this transition without resistance. However, this is not a consciously made choice. It arises from a deep state of the soul, often silent, but powerful. The influence of a love lost can resonate on all levels of being, and for those who already feel ready, this loss can be the final push to depart in peace, feeling that everything that needed to be lived has already been fulfilled alongside the other. But not all cases follow this pattern. There are couples where one departs and the other continues living for many years, even if they feel longing. What Cayce pointed out was that everything depends on the individual mission of each soul. Even among very close couples, there may be distinct paths to be followed after physical separation. The love that united them remains, but the journey becomes independent. In other words, the spiritual connection exists, but it doesn't force a joint departure. It respects the free will of each one and the continuity of the lessons that still need to be lived. Therefore, it's not something magical or determined, but a complex interaction between emotional bonds, spiritual choices, and inner disposition. Each story is unique, and each departure, too. Science, in turn, also tries to explain this phenomenon. Doctors point out that the impact of intense grief in older people can trigger a series of physical reactions, such as decreased immunity, cardiovascular disorders, and aggravation of pre-existing conditions. Researchers use a term called broken heart syndrome, when emotional stress causes symptoms similar to a heart attack. This can happen especially with elderly people who have spent most of their lives with their companion. However, what science still can't measure is the power of the spiritual connection that can accompany this process. When a couple lives in deep harmony for decades, there's something beyond the physical that unites them. Something that forms over time, in daily living, in mutual care, in shared pains. And this something may be precisely what determines the departure so close between them. In Cayce's readings, there are several passages where he describes the continuity of consciousness after death. He stated that the spirit remains aware of what is happening around it for some time, especially when it is emotionally involved with specific people or situations. In many of these cases, the newly departed spirit still feels connected to the home, the environment, the emotional bonds it cultivated in life, and this connection can be stronger when the partner is still alive and emotionally distressed. The spirit feels the other's pain, even being in another dimension. Cayce said that true love doesn't dissolve with death, it only changes form. This view helps to understand why some people depart soon after their spouse. It's not abandonment, but reunion. A return to the strongest bond they built throughout their existence. In one specific reading, Cayce mentioned that in certain cases, the spirit of the first to depart prepares to receive the other. Not as an imposition, but as a silent invitation. A presence that whispers in the heart of the one who remained, awakening a longing that cannot be explained with words. It's a longing that doesn't just wish to remember, but to reunite. And this can influence not only the emotional, but the physical body of the surviving partner. Elderly people already live with more fragile health, and the pain of losing the one who has always been by their side can be the final trigger. Cayce reinforced that this process should not be seen with sadness, but with respect for the connection that true love allows. When two souls walk together for so long, they can choose to continue side by side, even after the last farewell. The most touching thing in these accounts is realizing that not even death can interrupt certain ties. According to Cayce, spiritual affinity is more powerful than any physical obstacle. He believed that souls who have lived together with harmony and purpose have a great chance of meeting again in other dimensions, not as a prize or miracle, but as a natural consequence of the bond they built. By departing within days of each other, the couple simply answers an inner call that transcends logic. It's a silent decision of the soul, often unconscious, not to continue alone. Cayce described this as a kind of return home, not to the physical home, but to the spiritual home, where the two can continue their journey, free from time and the limitations of the body, a new beginning but together. Still, Cayce always warned that each case is unique. There were couples who, even with great love and affinity, did not depart together because one still had important lessons to fulfill. For him, life is not limited to the time spent with the other, but to the personal mission of each one. When that mission is unfinished, even the suffering of loss is not enough to anticipate the departure. The spirit remains, learns to deal with the absence, grows with the pain and follows its path. This does not diminish the love lived. It only shows that the spiritual bond does not depend on constant physical presence. In some cases, this interval between departures is the necessary time for one of the partners to complete what they came to do here. Cayce saw this as part of a larger plan, where nothing happens by chance and everything obeys the greater wisdom of the soul. Another interesting point is how families react to these cases. Many children and grandchildren report that despite the pain of the double loss, they feel a kind of peace in seeing that the grandparents departed almost together. It's as if that story had ended in the most coherent way possible. Some say they feel the presence of both in the house, as if they continue to take care of the family, even invisibly. Cayce said that this is possible. Spirits who still have emotional ties with those who remained can accompany their loved ones for a while, especially in the first days after death. Not to interfere, but to welcome, to calm, to soften the grief. In cases of couples who departed together, this presence is usually perceived as a serene energy, almost as if they were saying, "We are well together again." Among the many accounts that reached Cayce, there was a common pattern in couples who passed away with little time in between: serenity at the moment of death. People close to them reported that after the first one's passing, the other seemed to surrender calmly, without resistance, as if they were ready, accepting what was to come with ease. This acceptance wasn't the result of giving up, but an intimate understanding that the cycle was complete. Cayce emphasized that the soul feels when its mission ends, and this perception can arise subtly, like a peaceful intuition. Instead of fighting against time, the spirit chooses to return, and this choice is respected by the spiritual realm. Thus, when the body weakens after the loss of a great love, it's not only grief at work, but also the inner wisdom that that bond needs to continue, now on another plane. It's important to say that Cayce never romanticized death. For him, death was just a transition, a passage from one state to another. It wasn't an end, but a transformation. He explained that what defines this crossing is the state of consciousness at the time of departure. A heart at peace facilitates this process. And when there's love involved, especially in couples who have lived decades together, this peace is usually present. The departure of the second spouse, in this context, is seen not as a tragedy, but as a coherent ending to a journey lived side by side. Therefore, Cayce recommended that families view these double departures with respect and gratitude. Pain is inevitable, but understanding that there's a greater purpose behind these events can ease the suffering. It helps to accept that certain souls were born to walk together until the end and beyond. For those who remain, especially children and grandchildren, the challenge lies in transforming longing into living memory. Cayce encouraged these moments to be remembered with love, without excessive attachment. He believed that speaking fondly of those who have passed on, keeping their stories alive, helps both the living and the departed. Memory becomes a bridge between worlds, and when it comes to couples who passed away together, this memory gains even more strength. It represents a rare type of bond that has survived time and matter. Seeing this as a privilege rather than a tragedy can change the way death is felt and understood. Cayce said that when there's understanding, grief transforms into reverence, and reverence is a form of continuous love. Love that doesn't require physical presence, but remains silent, firm, as a safe foundation for those who continue living. Another important teaching from Cayce is about the continuity of the spiritual bond. He stated that even after death, souls continue to learn, grow, and in many cases, interact with the more subtle planes of the material world. When two souls who were spouses reunite in the spiritual realm, they not only celebrate this reunion, but also prepare for the next steps of the evolutionary journey. This may include new cycles, future reincarnations, or spiritual work in other spheres. Nothing is lost, everything is transformed and continues. The bond built on respect, love, and companionship becomes a foundation for future experiences. And even if they return to Earth in other lives, this connection will continue to influence the decisions, the encounters, and the paths they will follow. Life, for Cayce, is a continuous flow of learning between souls who recognize each other. There's also the energetic aspect of living together. Couples who have lived together for many years end up synchronizing not only habits, but vibrational patterns. This attunement affects body, mind, and spirit. When one goes, the other feels this rupture on all levels. It's not just the physical absence, but a kind of subtle imbalance that sets in. Cayce described this as a weakening of the life force. The surviving partner needs time to readjust this vibration. In some cases, this adjustment doesn't happen, especially when there's a very strong emotional surrender to grief. The elderly person's energy system collapses, making the transition easier. But when there's support, acceptance, and a sense of continuity, this energy can reorganize. Therefore, Cayce always recommended caring for the emotional well-being of grieving elderly people, offering affectionate support and stability. Even with all these explanations, it's natural for family members to seek to understand why this happens specifically to their parents or grandparents. The answer, according to Cayce, lies in the degree of spiritual and emotional connection that has been cultivated throughout life. He believed that couples who faced challenges together, built solid bonds, and maintained a relationship of mutual learning were more prone to this type of outcome. It wasn't something tragic, but a reflection of the depth of the bond built. In these situations, death doesn't separate, it just changes the way of being together. The body is gone, but the bond remains. For Cayce, understanding this doesn't eliminate the pain, but gives it meaning. And where there's meaning, there's also comfort. The important thing is to recognize that true love never ends. It only takes on new forms as the soul evolves and follows its path. When we observe these cases carefully, we realize that they bring more than sadness or mystery. They reveal a profound aspect of the human condition, the ability to build bonds that cross death. Cayce reminds us that this isn't a privilege of a few, but a potential of all. The difference lies in the quality of the bond, in daily care, in the respect cultivated throughout life. A couple who truly loved each other, who learned together and faced the pains with unity, built a solid spiritual path. When the time comes, this path continues, even without the body. The spirit recognizes this path and follows it naturally. And if both are ready, the close departure becomes just another step on this common journey. There's no rupture, just continuity. For those who remain, understanding this can alleviate the pain and strengthen the trust in what is not seen, but felt. Often, family members only realize the depth of this connection after the loss. During life, the gestures of care and simple routines seem commonplace, but when the two depart almost together, everything takes on another dimension. The silence of the house, the objects left behind, the old portraits reveal a story of complicity that now continues on another plane. Cayce advised people to pay more attention to these signs. He said that death teaches, and that those who have passed on still have something to communicate even without words. In many cases, this communication happens in dreams, sensations, unexpected intuitions. For Cayce, these experiences are not illusions, but small encounters between dimensions. When there's true love, communication continues, even if subtly, and recognizing this helps to maintain the bond with serenity, without attachment, but with gratitude. Another aspect that Cayce emphasized was the importance of the legacy that these couples leave. They not only departed together, but lived in an exemplary way. They taught with attitudes, with consistency, with presence. They showed that love can mature, resist time, and become a foundation for future generations. This type of love needs to be remembered, spoken about, valued, not as idealization, but as a real reference. Cayce believed that stories like this had the power to inspire other people to live more conscious and respectful relationships. When a couple leaves this mark, even after their departure, they continue to positively influence the world around them. Therefore, more than understanding the close death between spouses, it's important to recognize what was built in life. It's this construction that remains and transforms everything it touches. Many who study spirituality end up finding comfort in this type of explanation, not because it eliminates the longing, but because it offers a broader context for the pain. Cayce said that understanding the cycles of the soul helps to go through grief with dignity. Knowing that love is not lost and that reunions are possible is a powerful solace. But he also reminded that this requires emotional maturity, patience, and openness. It's not about seeking proof, but about perceiving with the heart what the common gaze doesn't see. And when the heart is open, it's possible to feel that the presence of those who have passed on still inhabits the everyday, not with sadness, but with tenderness. A living memory that accompanies the steps, inspires decisions, and comforts in moments of silence. For the elderly who face the loss of their partner, Cayce left a clear message. Life continues whether on this plane or the other, and continuing to live with dignity is a way to honor the love lived. Some will depart soon because they feel that the mission is accomplished. Others will remain longer, carrying with them the example built together. In both cases, the connection remains active. The soul doesn't forget what it lived with truth. Therefore, taking care of oneself, maintaining faith and accepting the time of life are attitudes that help in this delicate moment. Cayce always valued the balance between the material and the spiritual plane. Understanding that death is not punishment, but continuity, allows living grief with more wisdom, and this wisdom becomes a gift, not only for those who depart, but for all who remain. If you know someone who has lived something similar, share this story. Sometimes, understanding what's behind these events can ease the hearts of many people. And if this video made sense to you, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving us a like. This helps us continue bringing content that values the wisdom of life, especially in this phase where every detail matters even more. Talking about death with respect is also a way to celebrate life. And by recognizing the beauty of the connections that survive time, we become more prepared to deal with longing and more open to perceive the signs that love, in fact, doesn't end. It just changes place.